the IDF completing this wave of airstrikes against Hezbollah weapons depots in southern Lebanon. Your sense, is this one step closer to a broader escalation once again across that front?
It looks like mowing the lawn, and it looks like standard Israeli operations against Hezbollah attempts to violate the ceasefire agreement, to redeploy in the south, to refurbish or reestablish their presence in various, of course, as always, civilian houses in Lebanon. It all looks civilian, and what Israel struck appeared to be a civilian house, only that it was used by Hezbollah.
Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, always spot on. We love to hear from you. You have been with us from October 7 when the war broke out, and we appreciate your amazing insights, what's currently happening on the ground in Syria.
So for more, it's a pleasure to welcome to studio Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and former IDF International spokesperson, and Daniel Sheck, Director of Diplomacy at the Hostage and Missing Families Forum and former Israeli ambassador. Gentlemen, thank you both so much. So Damascus is not happy with this trip. We just saw there Benjamin Netanyahu and the top brass thanking soldiers in that very crucial buffer zone. What do you make of what is going down there, the significance right now?
Well, for one, the assessment must have been that it's a safe place to be because Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Defense, Head of Shabak, and various Israeli generals
they were all
in one location. So obviously, apparently, the intel assessment was that the situation is under control and that it is 100% safe to be there. Otherwise, it would have been a very risky and foolish thing to have so many important people in one place. More to the matter, I think this is an attempt by Israel to indicate to the Syrian leadership that Israel is intending to stay in that buffer zone. This is one of those new positions that Israel took control over after the regime in Syria fell. And the message here is pretty clear. We're here, we're prepared to stay. If we need to stay for a really long time, then we will do so. And I think the demand here from the new Syrian regime is that there needs to be a security buffer zone in between the Israeli border, the actual Israeli border, 1974 ceasefire zone, and somewhere towards Damascus. Otherwise, the risk for Israel is too big. And I think what Israel is signaling is that we're going to hold on to this until the situation on the ground is really clear and safe for Israelis.
And Daniel, Ahmed al-Sharaa, a former jihadi, of course, 12 months ago was part of this rebel ousting of Bashar al-Assad. Now he's in a suit, he's in the White House, he's meeting with top leaders. His whole reputation, his global standing has changed dramatically in 12 months. The skepticism, though, remains on the Israeli side when it comes to security. What do you make of the meetings?
It's not necessarily because of his person. You know, he's on a fast track back to respectability on the international scene. But everyone understands that Syria is far from being a stable state, and that there are still many risks for his regime and elsewhere. There's so many factions that can suddenly erupt into some kind of conflict between communities. So I think it's probably a reasonably calculated thing that Israel is doing, maintaining Syrian forces at arm's length and keeping such a buffer zone. Of course, it's not something that can be, I think, that can eternally exist. And at some point, Israel will have to draw a real border there that it respects. But I think for now, everyone understands that the risk is real.
And talking about risks being real, as we turn our attention slightly, more Israeli airstrikes across the northern front. The IDF has today launched a wave of strikes on Hezbollah targets in 2 villages in southern Lebanon after issuing evacuation warnings. They're part of a series of strikes in the past 24 hours targeting terror infrastructure belonging to Hamas or Hezbollah. So, Jonathan Conricus, those terror threats persist. The IDF completing this wave of airstrikes against Hezbollah weapons depots in southern Lebanon. Your sense, is this one step closer to a broader escalation once again across that front?
It looks like mowing the lawn, and it looks like standard Israeli operations against Hezbollah attempts to violate the ceasefire agreement, to redeploy in the south, to refurbish or reestablish their presence in various, of course, as always, civilian houses in Lebanon. It all looks civilian, and what Israel struck appeared to be a civilian house, only that it was used by Hezbollah. But actually, the more interesting action, I think, took place when Israel struck the Ain el-Hilweh, so-called refugee camp, administered by, no surprise, UNRWA, and a fertile breeding ground for terrorists. And that was quite an unusual strike. And I would connect, I mean, the basis for that was imminent intel of an imminent attack that was being prepared from that by Hamas, ordered from Gaza, but prepared in Lebanon in order to attack Israel from the north. And that was quite an unusual strike. And I'd connect the bigger picture here with the efforts in Lebanon that are stalling quite a bit, where the Lebanese government, according to the agreement, is supposed to disarm Hezbollah. That isn't really happening. And Hezbollah, Naim Qassem said just a week ago, we're not going to disarm of our weapons. And if you think so, you're in for a surprise. That's a situation that is very dangerous. And what Israel is doing is actually taking steps in order to have everybody understand that we're not going to tolerate the situation. The Lebanese are complaining, condemning, but they're doing it at very low volume and low key. And I personally believe that they would be very happy if Israel did the heavy lifting and the dirty work for them, disarming Hezbollah and disarming Hamas and other rogue factions, because it appears as if they have run out of steam or political capacity to do so themselves.
But what is abundantly clear is that Hezbollah certainly is not disarming.
No doubt about that.
Juncture, no doubt at all. Gentlemen, stay with us. We'll put more of those dots together as you explain it. So, Daniel, when you hear exactly that, we know that there are congressional issues. This could all take time. But one of the issues that clearly stood out for everyone in this region is the issue of normalization. MBS says he wants to join the Abraham Accords, but the path to a Palestinian state needs to be made clear. How does that sit with you from a diplomatic perspective? It's not going to sit well with many Israelis at this juncture, quite clearly.
Tell me something we didn't know. It was from day one clear that that would be a precondition. The Netanyahu government spokespersons sometimes try to, soften it. They'll be content with just a general statement on it. No, I don't think so. Since the Saudis were, in a sense, into the making of this agreement from day one. They didn't do it with Trump directly. They did it with Emmanuel Macron. They prepared most details of this plan. They will insist on the Palestinian issue, probably not on the actual creation of a Palestinian state, but something something that you can sink your teeth in more than just a general statement. But I'd like to follow up on something that Mr. Wegenheim just said and about the Congress. I think what stands out really is that Saudi Arabia, in the eyes of this administration, I'm saying this administration, Saudi Arabia is beginning to replace Israel as the prime ally in the region. It's clearly the prime morsel that Donald Trump is looking for economic and business reasons, things that Israel can't offer. So I'm not saying he's turning his back on Israel, but he's courting Saudi Arabia much more than he's courting Israel currently. But I insist on the fact that this is the administration, and it might not be the case in Congress, and it might not be the case in public opinion in the US. So I agree with him. It's not a done deal yet.
Jonathan, your thoughts on exactly that, the cost of normalization. Before October 7th, reports suggested that those deals were imminent between Jerusalem and Riyadh. Then, of course, we know what happened. It's more than 2 years now. And we heard the rhetoric there out of the White House. What does it mean for Israel? How important strategically would those normalization deals be right now?
So there's a lot to unpack here, and Mike's report was really compelling. I'd say the following. There's winners of this meeting. That's bin Salman himself. Great win for him. Gets a security deal with the US, gets global recognition, gets forgiven and washed clear of the Khashoggi event, at least at the presidential level, and that indicates the vector. And he delivers remarks in English for the first time on a global scale, and credit to him for all of those things. Losers probably would be Israel, sadly. It saddens me to say, but we're not getting anything in return for this happening. Not that Israel really had a say and not that Israel had leverage over it, but we told ourselves, and we were told by none other than the Prime Minister, that indeed that would be the arrangement and that is what would eventually happen. Security guarantees for the Saudis, which is what the Saudis wanted, and that would mean normalization with Israel and Abraham Accords. Sadly, that didn't happen. Now, F-35s is a concern, and Mike is spot on in terms of the qualitative military edge. I'm less concerned about F-35s in the hands of the Saudis. I am much more concerned about the fungible nature that with which the president looks at this asset, this mighty fifth-generation aircraft. And I'm very concerned that it may find itself sold to the Turks, for instance. Now, that would be a clear and blatant threat towards Israel. Saudi is one thing. I don't think that they have the same level of hostility and negative intentions towards Israel. Turkey definitely has, and I hope that this won't expand further. Nuclear power has been on the wish lists of the Saudis for a long, long time. 2 years ago, most people would scoff and, joke about the Saudis wanting nuclear research on their soil. I understand, based on a statement by the Secretary of Energy, that it's not going to be enrichment on Saudi soil, which is really the core matter. It's going to be about the provision of electricity, full stop. If there's any type of breach from that, any additional deviation from protocol, Saudis wanting enrichment on Saudi soil, that could mean a whole new chapter in the Middle East. Egypt, Turkey, and many other countries would be vying for the same things, and they would have a strong case in order to try to get it. So a lot has happened in the last few days. Just the scope of the delegation, more than 1,000 participants on the Saudi side, indicates what the ambassador just spoke about, the size and really the importance of the matter and how much is on the table, how much money, and what the Americans are interested in getting in return for this recognition.
And of course, another winner, Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump needs the normalization precisely in order to convince Congress, because that's one tool to convince Republicans and Democrats who are hesitant because they fear for the alliance with Israel to go forward with it.
Your thoughts right now? We have a minute left. Hamas being eliminated was supposed to be a goal of the war. Are you surprised at the strength that is showing right now in different parts of the region as we speak?
Yeah, they're not showing significant strength. It's, leftover capabilities, not really strong military capabilities. I don't see a certain strategy. It's local skirmishes at the tactical level. But every day that goes by and that international stabilization force isn't fielded, put on the ground with the clear directive and mandate, if we're talking in UN terms, Chapter 7, to use lethal force in order to implement the mandate, and in this case, the mandate will be to disarm Hamas. Every day that goes by and that doesn't happen is another day that Hamas will regain their capabilities, strengthen their hold over the civilian population, and make it more difficult to dismantle them once the time really comes.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. We really appreciate this interview and the way you laid it out so beautifully so we could understand. Yeah, what's happened in Syria was absolutely incredible. To have Bibi Netanyahu meet the top brass of the various Israeli heads of the departments on the border of Syria was very poignant. Syria dates itself back always to the times of the Bible, when Abraham and his son Eliezer, it talks about heading straight to Damascus. So Damascus, which was now known as Damascus, is not strange territory for the Jewish people and Israel. We have been borders with Syria since it became the name Syria. But it was always, as referred to in the Bible, as the Messick. I personally learned a lot about it during the Yom Kippur War in 1973, when the Yom Kippur War broke out. And it was a very difficult war. We were taken by surprise. And our Prime Minister then, Mrs. Golda Meir, said that to her death she will regret of not mobilizing us ahead of time. And we were attacked from the south and the north, Egypt from the south, and Syrians and Lebanons from the north. It was a terrible onslaught, a surprise. This was the day we were all in synagogue. This was the day when we were all praying, the Day of Atonement, when this war broke out. And for the first few days, we were in a very precarious situation. Miraculously, with God's blessings, we were able to take control and retake our territories that were conquered by the Egyptian army. We went as far. Ariel Sharon was then the prime minister, was able to circle the fourth of the Egyptian army and totally isolate them. We took over the Suez Canal. We could have gone straight to Cairo in the south. In the north, I remember our path, after we took the Golan Heights, our pathway to Damascus was wide open. We could have gone straight to Damascus. And I remember then I was a 12-year-old listening to my rabbi, the head of the worldwide Chabad movement, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of blessed memory, how he was campaigning so much for Israel and for the Israeli soldiers, and he was encouraging them. He says, go straight to Damascus, go straight to Damascus, not to conquer it, but just to show that we can. Power through strength. And that is the only way our enemies have learned and learn until today. And this is what Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus was talking about. The reality is, on the ground in Gaza, unless Hamas is totally eliminated, how did World War II end? 2 words: unconditional surrender. Those are the 2 words that we have to hear from Hamas. Unconditional surrender. Without that, there's not going to be an end to this war. We saw right away, as soon as the ceasefire was announced, within no time, Hamas came out of the tunnels and began killing its own, the Palestinians, on a live stream. The world was able to see it. Obviously, there was no protest to that. We didn't see people on college campuses protesting Hamas killing its own Palestinians. But we saw that. As Douglas Murray so very well put it, very eloquently and to the point, with the analogous of, if you had your house on fire and you call to get it extinguished, you're not asking to get 80% of the fire extinguished or 90% of the fire. You're asking to get the whole fire extinguished. Not even just the fire, even the embers need to be extinguished. Otherwise, it's a threat to its very own existence for the fire to flame up again. And this is what we're dealing in Gaza. We're dealing with Hamas. Unconditional surrender is the only way we're going to win this war. And this is the way we won the war in Berlin. This is the way we won the war in Japan. Unconditional surrender. That's the only way you win a war. And this is so important. And what I think what Lieutenant Colonel is trying to come across, we are in a precarious situation. We cannot just repeat the same again. We cannot just go through an operation of 2 years of heavy fighting, heavy casualties. Close to 1,000 young soldiers were lost on the Israeli side. We don't know how many on the Hamas side. Those numbers are never substantiated, are never credible, so it's really hard to know how many died of natural causes, how many died as collateral damage, how many died were actually combatants. The numbers are just numbers thrown out, but there's no substantiation to it. Whatever it is, there's definitely a lot of deaths that should have never happened. The world must remember, October 7, Israel did not ask for. October 7 was an aggression, was an assault, was an attack on a sovereign country where 3,000 bloodthirsty terrorists breached the border of a sovereign country and attacked civilians, 1,200 innocent civilians, murdered them, decapitated them, tortured them, burnt children in front of the parents, killed parents in front of the children, tied up children and put them aflame together. The most hideous, savage crimes to humanity that the world hasn't seen since the Holocaust was live streamed. And it wasn't about Israel. It wasn't about the Israelis. It was about Judaism. And the proof to point was when that young terrorist, and this is all recorded, live recording, calls his mother to brag, I just killed 10 Jews with my own hands. I still have the blood on my hands. And the mother just praises him, praises him. It's not about Israel, it's not about real estate, it's about Judaism. This is the war we're fighting. We're fighting a war, a religious war of survival. They want to devour us. They want to destroy us. They want to annihilate us. Us meaning not just Jews, the Christians as well. They see us both as enemies to their radical jihadist war. This is a war that, unfortunately, Israel had no choice but to fight and fight for its own existence. Many people don't know this. The original plan was a coordinated effort with Hezbollah from the north and Hamas from the south. Together they were going to try to invade all of Israel. Miraculously, once again, God has protected us. And they got as far as Gaza, and Hezbollah got as far as the northern border, and then we were able to repel them and push them back. And that's where we are at now. The world needs to recognize that Israel comes in peace. When we landed in Israel in 1948, we landed to be on our feet. We didn't come as victims of surviving the Holocaust. We came here as pioneers. We rolled up our sleeves. We took a land that has been desolate, that has been deserted, neglected for 2,000 years. And we took this land, and after going through everything we went through in the Holocaust, we still invested everything we had to turn this land into a first world country. Not just for Israel, but for the whole Middle East. From the 9 million citizens that live in Israel, 2 million are Arab. 2 million are Arab. They call us apartheid. They have the same voting rights. They have the same rights as any Israeli. And you ask them, they would tell you that they prefer living in Israel versus anywhere else in the Middle East. And the democracy that Israel shows, that what Israel has accomplished in its short 77 years, no other country can come close. Israel in 77 years with its inventions, innovations in all areas of life, just beginning with agriculture, what Israel has brought to the world. Mr. Netanyahu recently said at a press conference, you enjoy cherry tomatoes. Where did that come from? That came from Israel. You enjoy a drip system that revolutionized the whole irrigation system? That's from Israel. The cell phone, you have part of Israel in you. Everyone who owns a cell phone. Israel in its 77 years has been on the cutting edge of innovations and inventions, not for itself, but for humanity. And it has provided humanity with such advances that no other country has done that. Why? Because we have a mandate from God to be a light unto the nations. And we are committed to that. We are obsessed with life and the living, and we'll do anything we can to the end of time to preserve life, to promote life, and to make your life more comfortable. Israel is here for you, for the world. Israel doesn't ask what can the world do for Israel, but what Israel can do for the world. So we certainly hope that the world recognizes the energy, the commitment, the blessing, the miracles that Israel has. Be with the right side of history. Support Israel. Love Israel. You'll be rewarded. God bless you. God loves you.